of Canto 10. There's a nice painting at the close-up. Brahma is kneeling, Krishna is standing beneath a tree with his left hand raised, holding yogurt and fruit in his left hand because he got up in the middle of having his lunch. He was interrupted from his lunch, heard the other evening, because the calves had wandered away. Krishna had just finished giving liberation to Aghasura, the serpent demon. The cowherd boys celebrated, well done, well done. And they went off to have lunch. And Brahma saw everything and was wondering, what is the limit of the mystic power of this young boy? Krishna at this time was 4 years old. Think of some little boy that's 4 years old. Soon to turn 5, after this pastime. A year had passed and he graduated from taking care of the calves to taking care of the cows. In his 5th year. So Brahma decided, not very nice thing. He decided to test his mystic powers against Krishna's mystic powers. So with his mystic power, when the calves were grazing for fresh grass, he kidnapped them all and put them in a cave. And when the boys saw the calves were missing, they were about to interrupt their lunch and go look for the calves because that's their life. Take care of the calves. Krishna said, no worries, I'll go find the calves. When he was gone, searching here and there, Brahma took all the cowherd boys, put them in a cave. And during the time that Brahma was gone and Brahma came back, a whole year had passed on earthly time. That is to say, on Brahma's time it was just a short while. On earthly time it was a whole year. And during that whole year on earth, Krishna had reciprocated with the elder cowherd men and ladies. They wanted to have Krishna as their son. Krishna became their son. He manifested exactly the same forms as each one of the cowherd boys and each one of the calves for one whole year. So they would have the paternal affection of caring for Krishna like Krishna was their own son or their own calf. We saw some images, heard the story. During this time, Krishna is in a remote place, so others wouldn't be, it was private discussion. And Brahma offered his prayers. First he fainted to see, but this is an important detail. When he went back to see what Krishna would do with the calves and the cowherd boys missing, Krishna manifested each one of the cowherd boys and calves, and simultaneously with each cowherd boy and calf, forms of Narayana, as many as there were cowherd boys. And each of the forms of Narayana were surrounded by the potencies of Narayana, which is without limit. And they were all worshiping Krishna with prayers. It was a big concert. We're going to see that slide again in this evening presentation. So when he saw, then all of a sudden, poof, everything just disappeared, except Krishna. So then he realized all those calves and all those cowherd boys and all the forms of Narayan, and for that matter, everything, is a manifestation of Krishna's potency. So he offered 3 prayers so far. There's like 60 in the chapter. The first one is just like a cameo darshan of what you see standing before Brahma right now, what he saw with his eyes. And the next verse, he remarks that seeing this was his mercy, seeing this original form of Krishna, from which everything comes, was made possible by Krishna's mercy. Then he says, and this what he showed him was mercy on top of mercy. Then he says, to understand this form, beyond my capacity to understand this form, what to speak of the final in the second verse was the happiness that you experience. Then the other evening was verse number 3, celebrated verse, very, very important verse, where the process of bhakti is claimed to be the way to understand Krishna. Not only to understand Krishna, but specifically even to conquer the unconquerable Krishna. One of Krishna's names is Ajita, and Ajita becomes Jita when he experiences the pure devotion of the pure devotees. He becomes very moved by their pure devotion, and he reciprocates with them. The first half of that verse speaks of the necessity to let go of speculative knowledge. The Sanskrit phrase is jnane prayasa udapasya. That's an important verse, so I'm going to spend a little time with it again. Jnane prayasa udapasya namanta eva. Namanta eva. Namanta, offer obeisances, offer prayers. Fall before the Supreme Lord. Give up the udapasya means throw far away. Jnane prayasa. Prayasa means endeavor. Give up the endeavor. Giving up the endeavor to understand the unknowable by speculative knowledge. Instead, simply engage in service to the unknowable Supreme. One of Krishna's, another name of Krishna is Advoksaja. It's a nice name. In the Bhagavatam, first chapter, it says that the process of bhakti requires using the senses in the service of the master of senses, although he's unperceivable by the senses. Advoksaja. I'll do it again. We're supposed to use our senses to engage in the service of the master of the senses, although he's beyond the perception of the senses. But here's the good news. When that with faith and love is extended to the one who's beyond the senses, he makes himself visible to spiritualized senses, or senses that have become anointed with the anjana of prema. So that was there's a goal. The Sanskrit phrases are sadhana, that's the means to achieve a goal, and sadhya is the goal, or the fruit of spiritual practice. That's sadhya, and that's being in a relationship with the personality of Godhead through loving service, and he discloses himself. In fact, he makes himself accessible and even subservient to his devotee. So that's what we did last time we were together. Here's a little summary from one of our acharyas, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. By the hearing process, we develop such a loving, trusted relationship with Krishna that he will say, I am like this. You wanted to see me as I am. You wanted to serve me. Such a deep desire for so long. And I have tested you so many times, and you chose me. Now here I am. In that third verse that I was just reviewing, it's very important. It also mentions um, having, not only having faith, but becoming immersed in topics. Hari Katha. Through faith, immersing oneself in Hari Katha. So that's this by hearing process. We develop such a loving, trusted relationship with Krishna that he reveals himself. Here I am. Then the next set of verses, he's going to go further with this point and develop the theme a little bit of the limitations of jnana and the blessing that comes with bhakti. O Krishna, O Ajita, you are conquered by this path. Let me say more about the glorious process in contrast to jnana. So, text 4, it's color coded. The translation in English is the same color as the Sanskrit above. Shreya Shritim Bhakti. Devotional service unto you is the best path for self-realization. If someone gives up that path, Udasya, and engages in the cultivation of speculative knowledge, he will simply undergo a troublesome process, Vishanti, and will not achieve the desired result. As a person who beats an empty husk of wheat, stula, that's chaff, or an empty husk. So when in modern society, we don't see any of that so much. You don't see people, the agricultural people taking the wheat from the stalk. But I personally experienced it in Vrindavan, just a little sharing. In Vrindavan, in North India, it's more common to grow wheat than to grow rice. Because it's warming of the body and rice is cooling of the body. So they like wheat. Also, it's a little drier in the north. So they like wheat. And Vrindavan during Kartik month is a nice time for the devotees often like to go to Vrindavan during the Kartik month. It's also the harvest season. And one of the places where we go for yatras or visits to Vrindavan, the very first place we go generally is to Radharani's birthplace. Radharani's birthplace. Bravo. Very nice place. And it's off in the middle of, it's not commercial. Right next to where Radharani's birthplace is, a tributary of the Ganges used to flow. You can see the dried riverbed. You can see the structures that were along the riverbank and so forth. And just on the other side of that dried riverbed, it's just a wheat field. We like to go really early in the morning, and when we go really early in the morning, the agricultural people are doing their harvest. It's really nice to watch because it's like all the village people come together and they work in a cooperative way. There's no wage; it's just they work cooperatively, and they're, some are cutting down the wheat stalks, and then they bring it over and put it in a pile, and then there's songs. They're singing songs as they're cutting. They're sitting songs as they're laying. And then they're sitting songs as they thrash the wheat. And then they pick up the stalks and go around in a circle. And they smash it on a big stone slab. and the wheat goes all over the place, the kernel of wheat, and just leaves the chaff. And then the chaff gets discarded over there, and then they gather up the wheat, and all the while singing songs about Krishna. It's really beautiful. It's really beautiful. And, in the early morning of the hours of the day, when the sun has just come up and it's very fresh and very joyful experience. But supposing someone takes the stalks that have already had the wheat removed, and they thrash those. What do they get? They get sore hands. Or as it says, they undergo the troublesome process, but it only gets them kleshava. They only get trouble. A person who beats an empty husk of wheat cannot get grain. One simply speculates, cannot achieve self-realization. His only gain is trouble. It's a metaphor for people that are involved in agricultural life. They understand the example very, very readily. So here's a picture of wheat when there's still wheat inside the stalk of grain, and here's an image of when the grain is removed. So supposing these were still on the stem and you're thrashing and thrashing, what do you get? You get trouble. And moreover, kleshana, you get misery. But nalabhyate, you don't get any wheat. So the speculative process is compared to that in the first verse. There is a process. It's recommended in the previous one. There's a contrast, compare and contrast. There's a standard teaching technique in education. You want to understand something, you say what the something is, and you contrast it with something that is not. It's one of the faculties of intelligence is to discern one thing from another thing. So it's a standard technique in education, or technique, method. This is the thing, and it's not that. So the way to know the unknowable is by bhakti, and it's not through the Gyan process. That's verse 4. Verse 5. O Almighty Lord, in the past, many yogis in this world achieved the platform of devotional service, and there's some elements. By offering all their endeavors unto you and faithfully carrying out their prescribed duties, that's karma yoga. Through such devotional service perfected by the process of hearing and chanting about you, which was in the third verse also, the emphasis on hearing about Harikatha. They came to understand you, O infallible one, and could easily surrender to you and achieve your supreme abode. So they're yogis. Commonly when we say yogis, the implication is those who are performing Ashtanga yoga, the meditation type, in the Hatha yoga type, the asanas, Dhyan, Dharana, and Samadhi, the process of Ashtanga yoga. But the Ashtanga yogis can become devotees and can realize Krishna also, provided they're two things, mainly two things. Detached work, because even yogis that do yoga, some parts of their life and some parts of their day and week is not just sitting and doing yoga, asanas and meditation. They do other things. They cook and they eat and they sleep and they do other, they bathe, they wash their clothes, they do other things. And the things that one's life is made up of, we also do other things. There's a principle described in Bhagavad Gita of working where the fruits of one's work are offered to the Supreme, karma yoga. and you do your prescribed duty, exactly what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Perform your prescribed duty and always think of me, what the body does and what the mind does. Perform prescribed duty and offering those prescribed duties, the result of the prescribed duties, unto Krishna. Karma Yoga. There's just a little story, Prabhupada story. Many of the leading devotees that Prabhupada engaged in his service as GBC members, governing body commission members, leaders that were organizing things, many of them were sannyasis. One of them was not. A few of them were not. One of the principal ones during his earlier stage of life was Gopal Krishna Maharaj. Gopal Krishna Maharaj was married. He had one child, I believe, and he was engaged in a corporate job. For some time it was Coca-Cola, and sometime it was Colgate-Palmolive, like that. So he was not with a shaven head, and when he was wearing devotional clothes, he was wearing white, and otherwise he was dressed in a suit. And sometimes there's a nice example of this where he joined Srila Prabhupada, who was leaving New York, and was sitting. The devotees made arrangements so before his departure he could sit in the VIP lounge. And there was just a small number of devotees in the VIP lounge because it was a VIP lounge. And Gopal Krishna Maharaj came late because he had some office work. But he wanted to see Prabhupada off, and he came in and paid obeisances. The devotee telling the story didn't know who Gopal Krishna was. He just didn't know who he was. And Gopal Krishna apologized for being late and said, "I'm sorry, I came in my karmic clothes." It was a phrase that was used in his context sometimes. And Prabhupada shook his head and said, "Not karma yoga. Mm-hmm. You're engaging your work and offering the results into Krishna." That is very good. And that's what's being said here. But yogis who perform that other than their yoga practice and meditation, and the second is they perfected that process by hearing and chanting about him. Kato pani taya. They perfected their yoga practice by that hearing and chanting about Krishna. So we're not great yogis or anything, but we're engaged in the process of hearing and chanting about Krishna. Same as the third verse, again, here it is in the fifth verse. From whatever angle, whatever direction we go to Krishna from, if we go to Krishna supported by that process of hearing and chanting, which is exactly what we're doing this evening. We're from, different places. You go to school, I assume, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, you. Yeah. You're not going to Colgate-Palmolive in a business suit. You're doing something else. So your connection with Krishna is different than your mother's, and your mother's is different than your dad's. So, theirs is different than mine, and we're all, Krishna is in the center, and our connection with Krishna is specific, unique for each of us. But the hearing about Krishna is something we all share. And doing what you do, whatever the things are that we do at our different stages of life, in such a way that you do it nicely, because it's prescribed for us, we do it nicely, and we offer the results up to Krishna. I just had him chuckling. There's a young devotee I know from the Chicago community. His 19th birthday is this Saturday, and he went to a college in Toronto, and he's feeling sad. This is his first time he's having a birthday where he's not with his family. He misses his mom, he misses his dad, he misses his younger brother. And then he was no longer that. He was sharing. He had this really important exam, and there was another student who finished the exam early, 5 minutes early, and they turned to him and said, after the exam, let's meet outside. The proctor for the exam saw them having a conversation. So the proctor of the exam assumed that they were cheating, sharing answers to the exam. So the proctor for the exam kicked them both out of the exam hall and told them, I saw you cheating. He explained what was going on. And didn't get any answers. That wasn't what was happening. I don't believe you. And so he wrote to his professor a little email, probably not just a little one, explaining the situation. The professor lied, saying, I saw you cheating. He wasn't even in the room. And as a result, he's going to get a 0 for that exam. And he's a really honest kid. I mean, he's a really straight, honest kid. I don't know how to assume he was doing something other if they knew anything about him. His character is very clean and very clear. So how do you offer a 0 to Krishna?
Yeah.
We had a little discussion about it. Yeah, there's he'll be more careful, very careful in the future about abiding by rules because he doesn't want to be accused of something that's unclean when he's not unclean. So just abide by the rules. He didn't do anything. He didn't even answer the other person's, remark. Anyway, I was chuckling and thinking about how do you offer a 0 to Krishna? Because we're often very interested in getting a nice result, and if we don't get a nice result, we're shy to say anything in our prayers to Krishna, or we can share with a friend or someone close to us that I'm not doing very well. I'm not getting a good result. Because we're attached to the result. He got into this really good school because he's a really good student. In fact, he got a scholarship to this really good school because he's a really good student. And now he's getting a 0 in this exam. I don't know what he's going to do. Probably take a course again or something. He doesn't want to have a bad grade. So, but the purpose of our duties is to please Krishna. So we got a 0 in the exam because they thought he was cheating. But what does Krishna think? And you can apply that same principle to anything else that we do. We should do what we do carefully and offer the result for Krishna. And we do it for Krishna. And if it doesn't come out nicely, well, we tried. And next time we're going to try better because not for fruitive reasons, but for pleasing Krishna. Very popular. And by developing that consciousness, then one can easily achieve Krishna's supreme goal. That's what verse 5 is saying. There's verse 6. Now, in contrast, remember, compare and contrast. This is the contrast. Non-devotees, however, cannot realize you in your full personal feature. Nevertheless, it may be possible for them to realize your expansion as the impersonal supreme by cultivating direct perception of the self within the heart, self with a capital S. That means dhyan, meditation on the form of Paramatma within the heart. They may, so some persons that are meditating on Paramatma within the heart, they become Paramatma realized. Some meditating on Paramatma in the heart become Brahman realized. Because that's their hankering. There are people who want to become connected with the Supreme, but in an impersonal way. There's a type of meditator, a type of non-devotee. They're not wanting to be in service and connected with the person. They want to negate the material existence and make that connection with spiritual existence by this type of meditation. But they can do this only by purifying their mind and senses of all conceptions of material distinctions. I underline, of all conceptions of material distinctions. And the Sanskrit word is avikriyat. Avikriyat is very similar to a word that we use in ISKCON all the time, upadhi. Anyone here not familiar with that term? Upadhi? Upadhi? So if I ask anyone of you, you're going to be able to tell me what it means.
Mm.
What does upadhi mean?
Designation.
Huh?
Designation.
Yes, designation. The classic Vedic example of upadhi is a puddle, or a small lake, small body of water. Getting restless, you want to play with the phone, right? Oh, you want to really time. Have you ever seen a puddle? Small lake or small body of water? That's called an upadhi because just below that small body of water there's earth. So we call it a puddle or a lake, but it's actually just earth with a small. So the upadhi is the designation of what a thing really isn't. It's covering what the thing really is. Like, I'm an American. Well, you're also American. You're born in America? No, we're Americans. We'll put it there, buddy. And then some persons in the room, they're from the same generation as you, but they're born in India. So we say they're Indian. But that's an upadhi. I'm not American, they're not Indian, and you aren't either, because you're spirit soul. Because you take away the puddle or the little pond, and underneath there's the earth. Within, there's a spirit soul. So when one becomes free, you can live in the world acknowledging people commonly use designations all the time. And, it happens all the time when I travel. They want to see my government issued ID, and they put it in their machine, and then you want to see the photo, let's see it. And depending if it's international travel, they want to see your fingerprints, because that tells who you are, right? Since your fingerprints. It's not who we are. It's the body. The body's changing, we're going to give it up and get another one. Just like you're not, yellow and white shirt. That's not who you are. That's the shirt you're wearing right now. But that's not who you are. It's a covering. And the body is a covering also. And then there's who you really are. So in order to get to this impersonal realization, the person that aspires for that has to give up all those designations or material conceptions of material distinction. And all attachments to material sense object. That's a big one. There's I and there's mine. That's the idea. Aham and mama. But the material sense objects, that's in the mind category. If it's not mine, you want to make it mine. And having material sense object is not a problem. It's attachment. That's the problem. Identification with the body and attachment to the objects of the body. So how do you function when you don't have attachments to the objects of the body? You recognize that they're property of Krishna, and then you offer them to Krishna. You know, there's some cooked foods over here. The foods are fine. You offer them to Krishna, it's more than fine. And you take that which has been offered to Krishna, that's transcendental. But it's for, the whole idea, eating and thising and thating, whatever we do, is for the pleasure of Krishna. And that's how you can become free from attachment to a material sense object. But supposing you don't have attachment to Krishna, then it's kind of like anesthetizing or getting numb. It's artificial, withdrawing the senses from sense objects, like a tortoise. And you just stay inside the shell. It's artificial. So the bhakti process is not artificial, it's natural. But there are some persons that wish to be numbed, and so they like this process where they restrain the senses and free from the conceptions of material distinction, and then they can have an opportunity to realize the impersonal feature of the Supreme. Now we're going to go to the next verse, and this is the last verse for this evening, text 7. Here's the scene that Brahma saw when he came back after kidnapping the calves and cowherd boys. There he saw all the cowherd boys sitting together having lunch. Not only he saw it then, the next is there were all these forms of Narayana simultaneously with each of the forms of the cowherd boys. And then simultaneously with all the forms of Narayan, all the potencies of Narayan. All the Vishnu Murtis were surrounded by the opulences, headed by Anima Siddhi, mystic powers, 8 mystic powers, Ashtasiddhi, by the mystic potencies headed by Ajah, and by the 24 elements for the creation of the material world, headed by the Mahatattva. And these are all personified in their spiritual counterpart. Then Lord Brahma saw that Kala, Swabhava, Samskara, Kama, Karma, and the Gunas, their own independence being completely subordinate to the potency of Krishna, had all taken forms and were also worshipping those Vishnu Murtis. I mean, I like this. Who's ever seen time? You ever seen time? You can see the hands of a clock ticking, ticking. Time is passing. You can measure the passage of time. You can measure what time does It diminishes, it destroys things. It also brings things into being. But who's ever seen time? You see its influence. So what to speak of seeing the form of time? You have um, sometimes artists show this old person with a big chopper over his shoulder. That's death or time. He's walking slowly in a big gown, and here comes time. He's going to chop people. Because, as Krishna says, time I am the destroyer of all things. What's time personified but life? What does Swabhava? Anyway, in the spiritual realm, everything is personified. Everything is resting on person. Everything is resting on person because things, that's the material manifestation. And the material manifestation is resting on something spiritual. Just like this body is resting on the presence of the soul. We don't see the form of the soul, but the soul has form. As the body has form, the soul has form. And so all these potencies were what Brahma saw, and he heard them because they were offering prayers, hymns of praise to the Supreme Lord. It must have been like a big concert. And then the phrase that's used in the verse is Tarkya Nija Mahimani. Tarkya means logic and reason, and Tarkya means beyond logic and reason or inconceivable. Nija means his own. Mani means jewel. Mahimani. Nija Mahimani. That is, he saw his unlimited, inconceivable potencies. One of the authors of a commentary on the whole Srimad Bhagavatam is Jiva Goswami. Very little sidebar. Jiva Goswami wrote an epic literature, 6 parts called the Sandarbhas, covering all the topics of the Bhagavatam. And one of those 6 is Bhagavat Sandarbha describing Bhagavan. Towards the beginning of Bhagavat Sandarbha, he writes that in order to understand God, one has to accept that he has unlimited and inconceivable potencies. It's very reasonable. You could say he can't do this and can't do that, but he's not God. There's in European philosophers used to try to defeat theists by giving what's called the stone paradox. And the stone paradox is a trick. It's just semantics. But the stone paradox says, can God create something so heavy, a stone so heavy, he cannot lift it? It's a trick question. Because if you say, no, he can't create something so heavy, he can't lift it. There's something he can't do. And if you can say, yes, he can create something so heavy, he can't lift it. There's something he can't do. He can't lift it. And Prabhupada's answer is yes. He can create something so heavy he can't lift it and then lift it. And that's his inconceivable potencies. So to understand God, it's fundamental. God, or that which is the source of everything, has unlimited and inconceivable potencies. And that's what Brahma saw. He wanted to know what's the limit of Krishna's potencies. The answer, no limit. And he saw it. And he's highly intelligent, so he understood it. There's a similar verse when Brahma, this is now Canto 2, Chapter 9. Canto 2, Chapter 9 is describing the process of creation. And in the process of creation, Brahma appears first time, firstborn living being, from the body of Garbhodaksha Vishnu. Everyone's with me. There's a painting. There's Garbhodaksha Vishnu reclining on Sheshanag in the Garbhodak ocean. And from his navel comes a stem of a lotus. It's described in the Bhagavatam that stem of a lotus is the sum total karma of all the living entities that are within the body of Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And from his navel comes this stem, and on top is the most elevated of all of the entities in the universe, Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma, being very intelligent, he starts to ask questions. Very same questions we were talking about at the university. Like, who am I? And where did I come from? And what am I supposed to do? Immediately. He didn't wait till he went to college to ask that question. He started asking immediately. And he heard some splashing because he's below is the Garbhodak ocean. So he reasoned, if I climb down the stem, I'll find out where I came from. And climb down and down and down and down and down and down and down to find the end. And he realized I can't find out this way. He heard at that point he had left out the speculative knowledge part, the empiric knowledge part. And he then heard tapa. Tapa. 3 times. Tapa. Tapa means austerity. And he understood what that meant. He's supposed to go back up on the stem of the lotus flower and then he engaged in tapa for 1,000 celestial years. His tapa was meditating upon the mantra that he heard. It's a long time to chant. 1,000 years, celestial years. And there was darkness in all directions, pretty lonely. No cell phone, no prasadam, nobody that will say hi ball, how's it going? He's alone in darkness. But he was very fixed, and in that darkness, abyss of darkness, Vishnu appeared. He decided, let me show myself. And then Brahma was very enlightened. As he approached Vishnu, this is what he saw. This is the verse. The Lord was seated on his throne, Vishnu, and was surrounded by different energies, namely the 4, the 16, and the 5. And he was endowed with his 6 natural opulences along with other insignificant energies of a temporary character. But he was the factual Supreme Lord enjoying his own abode. So the 4, the 16, and the 5, they're easy to identify. These are the spiritual counterpart of things that make the material manifestation. The 16 are the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, the 5 working senses, and the 5 objects of the senses. What's the mind? That makes 16. Five is the 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, but they have their spiritual counterpart. It's like this other verse, so the modes of nature, they're in this world, but they have their spiritual counterpart. And that's what he saw. There's a very similar description in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, where Uddhava, we see at the feet of Krishna, is anticipating that Krishna is going to end his pastimes. So in Dwarka comes in his presence and asks Krishna to explain many things. And he wants Krishna to go with. He wants Krishna to take him with him. But there's a whole discussion between the two. There's a verse similar to what I just showed you. The personnel Krishna reveals he has all these different potencies. And all these different potencies are just to assist him. They're under his control of his desire. And he doesn't have to do anything. The energies do everything. He just desires. So here's the last verse for this evening. It's connected to what we just showed you. In time, learned philosophers or scientists might be able to count all the atoms of the earth, the particles of snow, or perhaps even the shining molecules radiating from the sun, the stars, and other luminaries. But among these learned men, who could possibly count the unlimited transcendental qualities possessed by you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who have descended onto the surface of the earth for the benefit of all living entities? So he's not knowable by his birth. Nice way of saying. And how is he knowable? One more time. Knowable through loving service, loving devotion. And when one engages oneself in loving devotion or loving service, there's a reciprocation. It's not a one-way, it's a two-way relationship. And Uddhava speaks about Krishna in this verse shown here. This is from third canto. On the left, that's Uddhava before Krishna, where he says, "Alas, how should I take shelter of one more merciful?" They're not speaking to Krishna in this particular situation. He's speaking about Krishna to Vidura. This conversation between the two takes place a second time, where you see on the far right side is Maitreya, where Krishna, after Krishna speaks to Uddhava in Dwarka, he tells him, "Yes, I'm going to be leaving soon, and I don't want you to be in any difficulty, so I want you to be in safe situation. You should go," because the whole of Dwarka, after Krishna's departure, sank back into the sea. "I want you to be safe. I want you to go to the Badrinath, take shelter of Narayana Rishi, the stage is there, and everything will be nice." They gave him that instruction. He didn't go, but he and he started to go. But then he couldn't bear separation from Krishna, so he came back. Near Prabhas, where Krishna's departure occurred. And here he is again, having another conversation, where Maitreya is in the background there listening, by the bank of the Saraswati River, as this painting is shown. Uddhava says about Krishna, "You have already arranged to give yourself," this is now Brahma's prayer, similar to what Uddhava said. You see at the bottom, text 35 of this chapter. Uddhava says to Krishna, Brahma says to Krishna, "You have already arranged to give yourself to Putana and her family members in exchange for her disguising herself as a devotee. So what is left for you to give to these devotees of Vrindavan, whose very lives and hearts are all dedicated only to you?" This is a painting of Krishna's taking the life of Putana, where she came to kill him. He liberated her and gave her a position in the spiritual world assisting Mother Jasoda eternally. What did she do? She disguised herself as a devotee. She came with a purpose to kill, but she disguised herself as a devotee, so Krishna accepted that, gave her position to eternally assist Mother Jasoda below. And she had family members, two. She had two brothers. And they were Bakasura, who Krishna also liberated. Thus we see Krishna allowed himself to go inside the beak of this giant baka. He couldn't swallow. Krishna made his body really hot. He had to spit him out. And then Krishna bifurcated his beak. You see on the right side the cowboys with their sticks ready to whack baka. Krishna didn't need any help. And his other brother was a Gasura, which Brahma saw. And he understood, Brahma understood, Krishna is giving liberation to Baka and Agha. They're giving a place in the spiritual world to Bhutana. What are you going to do for the residents of Vrindavan? Well, given everything to you. Body, their wealth, their lives, their hearts, their everything. You're everything for them. How are you going to reciprocate? I will. And it's not, it's all the residents of Vrindavan. I love this painting. It's, in one painting, it's showing all five rasas. According to the teaching of Rupa Goswami. In relation to the Supreme, there's five primary rasas. One is neutrality, or on reverence. Next is servitude. And more intimate is friendship, and more intimate is parental affection, and most elevated is conjugal love. All five are depicted in this one painting. And then Mother Jasoda receiving Krishna coming home. The cowherd boys are joyfully watching. There's some calf. There's the young gopis in the background, giving things to Krishna. Another nice painting where Krishna is returning from the pasturing ground. The young gopis their hearts are fluttering, just seeing the sidelong glances of Krishna, wishing to be with Krishna. And the cowherd boys are just playing all day long. The spiritual world is a fantastic place. They're doing things that look like the activities of ordinary people, but they're not ordinary people. It's not ordinary exchanges. That's what Brahma is marveling at. How fortunate are the residents of Vrindavan. So we got through verses 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then tomorrow evening, next day is another night service. Let's see if there's some discussion. Over with that.
Just some clarification, regarding Yoga Maya potency. So, like Yoga Maya, earlier, like day before yesterday, how we mentioned that it covered Krishna and then also it covered Brahma. So, is that also happening by the Lord's arrangement?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's the Lord, and then there's his Ichha Shakti, his desire potency, and then there's sub potencies. Everything happens by the sanction of Krishna. His potencies do everything. The Yoga Maya is one of those potencies. And a particular example, Krishna was marveling. Just see how my Yoga Maya potency is working. Because it was for his pleasure. That he orchestrated a pleasure that he was wishing the cowherd boys not enter the mouth of Agasura, and they entered the mouth of Agasura. because it was so Krishna could feel a transcendental emotion in relation to the power force. And he was marveling at how wonderful this Yogamaya doing her service. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I was thinking, so when general, so that's for pure devotees, but in general, like for us, it's always Mahamaya.
No, there's a type of blend. That is to say, devotional service is under the internal potency. To be even more specific, devotional service is under the care of Bhakti Devi. And Bhakti Devi is an expansion of Radharani. We can say devotional service is under the care of Radharani through the agency of Bhakti Devi. We have no access to devotional service except through that internal potency. Our consciousness is mixed, but Bhakti is not. Bhakti is pure. It's like, the sun is shining and maybe a cloudy day. The sun is not shining less. Our experience of the shining sun may be less. You go above the clouds and it's the same brightness. And when there's no clouds, it's like today, it's nice day.
One other thing also, I just sharing my realization too, like I didn't mention, when there is so many challenges, like that student getting a zero without no fault of his. So something like that, when we have those situations, I just feel that just surrender, even if it's Krishna's material energy, I feel just surrendering, just that also just gives such a peace of mind because you're not battling against the situation. Then it's like whatever happens, I just.
Well, there's lesson, but then what do you do with that emotion? The emotion goes to Krishna. I did this for you. And here, which I have in my hand, a zero. But I did this for you. And I've been misunderstood. And you know that. So, in the eyes of Krishna, he did just perfectly. Not only he did perfectly by not cheating, he didn't get bent out of shape when he got a zero. He felt protected. I mean, it took a while. He initially felt bent out of shape because he doesn't want to feel. But part of the lesson is who are you trying to please? Often it's the mind or a set of values that we just bought into that I've got to get excellent results in everything that I do, or I'm a failure. So we want to offer nice results. You go to the kitchen, you want to make something nice. But it's the desire to make something nice that makes it become nice. Transcendentally nice. Who's Christians, please? You just make something nice, but no desire to please Krishna, that doesn't have the same effect on your consciousness or others who take that cooking. So that's the lesson. The young man, I'm sure he's not going to cheat. Not that he did this time, or even contemplated. But it's a good lesson. Who are you trying to please?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I'm trying to reconcile two concepts you showed us today. So one is, my understanding is bhakti is more internal, so external doesn't matter.
Why do you say that?
Meaning, it doesn't matter, meaning more important is what you have internal.
Yeah, that's the essence, but you also want to make a nice offer.
Right, yeah. So the other concept also we just saw today was putana, internally was very wicked, but externally she was a devotee, acting like a devotee.
Well, that's what Brahma said. At the same time, our acharyas comment this way. When she saw this beautiful child Krishna, she was charmed. Oh, what a beautiful child. Now the wickedness was also there. The wickedness superseded the charm of the beauty of Krishna that she felt. And it's even right in the verse that she understood this child is meant to destroy the world. And she went ahead anyway. So the idea is there was just a small trace of devotion, and that small trace of devotion was what Krishna reciprocated by giving her liberation. So back to your question, devotion is mainly internal, but it's also it was a trick. She not only dressed as a devotee, she was extremely opulent. She was so opulent and so beautiful that Mother Yasoda and the others just let her right in the house, complete stranger, right in the house, in the inner chamber where a newborn child is. And that's like, doesn't happen. Some new people, that stranger come in your house with a newborn child. You don't do that. But she had that power to appear like that. They were wondering, is this the goddess of fortune? Who is this? So she wowed them with this external. But the act was, it was an act of a mother feeding a child. Because I've accepted this service of a mother feeding me as her child, living in the liberation. So it's not only internal. Krishna notices the external things that we do. He wants our love, but the love can be manifested even in a poor fashion as something that's not so nicely done.
So if I'm understanding it correctly, so although we don't have the internal love and devotion for Krishna, but externally we should try to be more
Yes.
pleasing. So that way,
Yes.
internally we will
Yes.
become more pleasing.
Yes. Yes.
That's why we have the etiquettes and.
That's right. That's why we have sadhana. We're not there yet, but we're doing things. And I feel that last time I was here, you were remarking, you feel that your deity worship has become a remark correctly. But you're carrying on, although it's mechanical. And Krishna knows that it's mechanical. But Krishna also knows you're carrying on. And he's accepting that. You're carrying on. And that he's also from within your heart, helping you to be aware it's become mechanical. Not that it started that way, but it's become mechanical. If Krishna wasn't prompting you from within the heart, you wouldn't notice it. You just keep going down and down. So he's accepting, even it's not with even the internal is not corresponding with the external. He's accepting the external because it's indicative of something. In our case of sadhana bhakti, indicative of something, however imperfectly performed. He accepts. I'm thinking of a Prabhupada story. In the beginnings of the Hare Krishna movement in the Lower East Side of 26 Second Avenue, the whole area was kind of like a derelict area. There were bums in the Lower East Side. There were other people besides bums, but there was, they were really. It's not like that now so much, but it was kind of like that at that time. And so one day, right in the middle of class, one of the bums, a drunken man, came staggering in to the space at 26 Second Avenue was like a subway car. It's kind of narrow and long. And so the doorway is over in one corner. And then Prabhupada was sitting at the far end. And just over there, right beside where he was sitting was a toilet, little bathroom. So the bum came staggering in and, he didn't say anything. He just was staggering. He wasn't a little drunk, I guess. And he walked right through the audience, went into the bathroom, put 2 rolls of toilet paper on the back of the toilet, walked out, closed the door, left. And the devotees were disturbed, like he's just disturbed the class. And Prabhupada stopped the class and said, "It's very good. His devotional service has begun." He was honoring, acknowledging with a gesture. And who knows why he did that gesture? It's an interesting gesture at that. But it was his service. His devotional service has begun. But even though Krishna recognizes.
There's one online question.
Okay.
This is from Achana Vidya Mataji. Hare Krishna Maharaj, how do the 14 planetary systems appear in the stem of the lotus? And Lord Brahma is sitting on the lotus. So does that lotus represent the Satyaloka?
The second part of the question is yes. Satyaloka or Brahmaloka is the topmost planet. And that stem is the area where the universes are situated in a vertical dimension. Now, obviously, as the artist is going to draw a stem, it looks like a stem. And obviously, the universes are not going to fit into this little slender thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not metaphorical, but it's the vertical dimension of the universe is not just some narrow tube. It's, the structure of the universe is vertical, and it's all within the stem of the lotus. That's the answer to your question. Other situation. Do you have something?
I have a question.
Okay.
So from my personal experience, what I have realized is that at different stages, at different situations, I feel connected with Krishna, but with different forms, like the Balakrishna, Radha Krishna, Jagannath Ji. I don't know why over the years I've always been connected with Krishna, but with different forms.
That's okay.
That's okay.
Oh, yeah.
That's because I see people who always worship just one form and
That's okay. You don't have to be like everybody else doesn't have to be like you. Diversity is fantastic. Anything else? Anybody? Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. One of the topic discussed in the Bhagavad Gita is time. Time destroys everything in this material world. Time is very powerful.
Very powerful.
And everything in this material world is the forward reflection of the spiritual world.
Yes.
And is there a time in spiritual world?
Yes.
But there is no influence of time.
time in the spiritual world is eternal. And eternal time is one of Krishna's potencies. It has an influence. It has an eternal influence. But the past is not at the time that we know. Past, present, future is the time that we know. That's absent. There's this saying I'm sure you've heard, time is conspicuous by its absence. Time as we know it is not there. Eternal time is there. Sat. Eternal time is there. Time is a fascinating topic. You okay? You're processing.
The time of no beginning and no end in spiritual.
And it's ever present. So your question was, is it absent? Is time absent? Time as we know it is absent, but eternal time is presence is felt. So eternality is felt. Knowledge is felt and Ananda is felt. Satchit and Ananda are all felt in the spiritual realm. Not the experience that we know. It's a mystery. It's definitely a mystery. Here, for example, I'm seated over here, over there, there's a door. When it's time to go, it's going to take some time for me to get from here to the door. So passage of time, so that's an event. Walk to the door and go out the door. So how do events work in the spiritual world? Well, there's no passage of time. There's no past, present, future. What's an eternal event? The mind cannot capture that one because we only know events that are within past, present, and future time. But their time is eternal. So the past times in Krishna are eternal. The past times are eternal. It's mind blowing when you start to think about anything that's of the spiritual realm. It's beyond our little binary processor to fit. And that's what eternal time is. There they are, the little ones. I think we're done. We're done. Thank you very much, Prabhupada.
Padmaraj K.
Reasonable.